The Apprentice. New movie came out this last weekend about Donald Trump and Roy Cohn. That's a little bit what we're going to talk about on Coffee with Alain this morning. Thank you for joining. I appreciate everybody that joins and comments and shares, watches, replays, listens to the podcast. Thank you to all of you. Don't ever want you to forget that I appreciate you very much. Want to remind you, go to enjoylifesafely.com. Sign up for the ebook, How to Stay Safe in This Crazy World. You get some strategies, some tips to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. You also get the newsletter. Newsletter goes out every weekend. Articles on staying safe, enjoying life, being exceptional. Make sure you get that at enjoylifesafely.com. Now let's talk about this movie. The movie bombed. It opened this last weekend and it made less than $2 million or so. I mean, it was a bomb. It was way at the bottom of the weekend movies. They released that Christmas movie, A Night Before Christmas or whatever, the sort of scary Christmas thing, 30-year-old movie. That did better. I mean, so the movie did terrible in the box office. Now, Sunday, if you remember, I said, do something for yourself. Make sure you do things for yourself. I took a break on Sunday. Wife doesn't go to movies right now because of the compromised immune system. She said, yeah, you go ahead and go. So I went to a movie that she wouldn't have wanted to watch anyway, and I went to The Apprentice. Now, let's back up a little bit. I was a fan of The Apprentice television show. I actually wrote a book, Lessons from The Apprentice, based on the first 3 seasons. I watched and recorded every episode of the first 3 seasons, and I took stuff out of there, and then I used my business and law degree to write comprehensive business lessons based on the show, and I actually had an agent in New York trying to sell it. And so I had an agent in New York, had a book, had the rough draft completed of the manuscript, Lessons from the Apprentice, actually wrote Donald Trump before I even got the agent, got a letter back from his office saying, no, thank you. Mr. Trump has his own book projects. Then lo and behold, agent called me up and said, I'm not going to be able to sell your book. Donald Trump and Mark Burnett came out with a book called Lessons from the Apprentice. Now, their book had a lot of glossy photos and inside information about the show and was pretty short on actual business advice. My book had a lot of good actual business advice, but I didn't have all the photos and back scene stuff from the show. His book sold because it had Donald Trump and Mark Burnett's name on it. Now, some friends of mine said, yeah, he probably took the idea when you wrote him. Did he? No idea. He might have, might not have. We may have both came up with it individually. And he didn't come up with it. His people did. His people wrote the book and compiled the pictures and stuff. Did they get it because I wrote the letter? And they thought, whoa, that is a good idea. We should do that? Maybe. I don't know. But again, I like Donald Trump. I have read all of his books, including The Lessons of the Apprentice. And I even got my Donald Trump mug. Now, this Donald Trump mug came way before he ran for president. This was actually back when The Apprentice was going on. And a friend of mine was in New York City, went to Trump Tower, met George Ross, the attorney that was on The Apprentice. My friend was an attorney as well. We went to law school together. And he brought me back this mug. So I do have a Donald Trump mug to talk about The Apprentice movie that just came out. So obviously I was interested in what the movie was because I've enjoyed Donald Trump throughout the years, reading his book, like the TV show and so forth. I do not want the show to get into political stuff, so I'm not even going to go there. We're talking about back before he became political. I want to say good morning to Eric. Appreciate Eric being here, and Eric saying you're fired. And Eric saying, I wonder if George Ross is still alive. That I'm not sure. I mean, he was fairly elderly when he was on that show. I know when my friend met him at Trump Tower, that was during the Apprentice show, so that was quite a while ago. And Eric said he loved that show also. Cool. Yeah, I thought it was a great show. Watched every season, every episode. And like I said, my book was based on the first 3 seasons. Anyway, let's talk about the new movie. It failed at the box office, probably for a couple reasons. One, if you don't like Donald Trump, you're probably not going to go to the movie. If you do like Donald Trump, you're probably not going to like the movie that well. And here's why. The movie is based on truth, but it's not 100% factual. I mean, it's a blend of truth and storytelling. And it's actually been called a Frankenstein story, the creation of a monster. And there is that theme through it. Want to say, Eric hated Omarosa. Yeah, I didn't care for her as much either. But the movie has been called a Frankenstein story, the creation of a monster, and it does have that theme in it. Now, if you're not familiar with Donald Trump's earlier life, this whole movie takes place in the 70s right up to the mid 80s. It ends at the time where he wrote his first book, The Art of the Deal, shortly after Roy Cohn died. Now, the movie focuses on that relationship between Donald Trump and Roy Cohn. And that's Donald Trump being the apprentice of Roy. Now, Sebastian Stan did a good job of portraying Donald Trump. He did not do a Saturday Night Live type of impersonation, but he did a good job of portraying a character that would have been a young Donald Trump. Now, Jeremy Strong, I thought, did an excellent job of portraying Roy Cohn. And then Maria Bakalova was in there. She did a good job as Ivana Trump, too, Donald Trump's first wife back then in the 70s and 80s. But the movie takes place with a young Donald Trump in the 70s meeting the older attorney, Roy Cohn. He's probably in his 40s when they met because he was in his late 50s when he died in the mid 80s. Roy Cohn, famous attorney. There was a movie about him starring Al Pacino. I haven't seen that movie. I forget what it was called. But if you've seen that movie, you know a little bit about Roy Cohn. If you've ever heard the Billy Joel song, We Didn't Start the Fire, Roy Cohn is mentioned in that song. So you've at least heard the name if you heard that song. Very influential attorney in that time in New York City. He got his start in the McCarthy hearings and stuff, working for McCarthy. Then in the 70s and 80s, very prominent New York attorney. He was called a fixer, did deals for people. Some of his clients were mafia. Okay. So he was involved in a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it probably not as legal. He was known to intimidate and bully and get his way and get things done. He helped Donald Trump get started in different things. Now, everything that happens in that movie, true? No, but it is based on truth. Roy Cohn had 3 rules that he supposedly taught the young Donald Trump that then Donald Trump took and it continues to use. And that's attack, 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 deny everything, and always claim victory. And you do see some of that in Donald Trump, right? And supposedly he learned some of that from Roy Cohn. Now, Roy Cohn was also a homosexual and died of AIDS, but he kept it hidden. He would never publicly admit he had AIDS. Right before he died, he was telling people he had liver cancer. So he was a tormented person, not 100% out in the open, and probably had, different things going on because of that. He was also disbarred like 3 months or so before he died. So I knew, like, when they disbarred him in the movie, oh, he was going to die soon, because I knew he died shortly after his disbarred for different things, ethical violations and so forth with the New York bar. I thought the movie was good. It was well made, and I thought the people did a great job acting, especially Jeremy Strong portraying Roy Cohn and portraying him as he gets sick with AIDS and so forth as well. It's interesting to see how it was portrayed, but again, I understand why it flopped, because people that don't like Trump aren't going to like the movie. They're just going to ignore the movie, even though maybe they would like it, because it does portray Donald Trump as sort of a bad guy, a very eager, ambitious young man that wants a lot. And then the Roy Cohn character sort of directing him in sort of an evil way of attack, deny everything, always claim victory, these rules that at the end you hear Donald Trump proclaiming. So I found it an interesting movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the way it was made. Do I believe it was 100% factual? Of course not. It was a blend of reality and fiction to make a story. Did the story have an agenda? Probably yes. To portray Donald Trump in a more negative light? Yes. It is what it is, right? Just like the Ronald Reagan movie, which I really enjoyed, portrayed Ronald Reagan in a more positive light and failed to do some of the negative things about Ronald Reagan. This movie portrayed Donald Trump in a more negative light and maybe didn't portray some of the positive things. Okay. They're movies. We can't take them literally. We can't believe them 100% because they're not. So that was my thoughts on The Apprentice. A little bit of history about me writing the book on The Apprentice, the television show. I got to use my Donald Trump mug this morning and drink out of it. So I hope you all go out and have a terrific Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow.